This is a story from Luke 14, verses 7 to 14. The big party. "Come to my party," a man said to Jesus. So Jesus went along. But in the middle of the party, he turned to the man and said, "You have invited all the wrong people." The man was surprised. "What do you mean?" he asked. Jesus looked around the room. "When you throw a party, you invite your important friends, your favorite relatives, and your rich neighbors, don't you?" "Of course," the man nodded. "And when they throw a party, you hope they invite you too." "That's right," said the man. "Well, I have a better idea," said Jesus. "The next time you throw a party, send your invitations to the poor, the crippled, the sick, and the blind." "But why?" asked the man, more confused than ever. "Because none of these people could ever pay you back. They are not rich enough or well enough to throw parties of their own. But I tell you, God will be so happy with your kindness that he will save a special seat for you at the party he plans to throw in heaven." One of the other guests heard this and shouted, "Hooray for God and for everybody who gets to go to this party in heaven." Amen.
Hi, everybody. Hello. Thank you, Maxine. Awesome. Loving it. Excellent. Okay, so today's reading is a bit of an odd choice for a harvest festival, which is the discussion we had when we had our planning meeting. And we discussed at length whether we should stick with this, which we'd planned last December, or whether we should change. And we decided to stick with it, and you will see at the end of my little chat why. I hope, if it's successful, I'm really hoping that God gets involved in this talk because, yeah, it's a thing. So today's reading that we've just heard from Roland, thank you very much, Roland, takes place when Jesus was visiting the house of a Pharisee. Everybody, can we boo the Pharisees, please? Boo. Thank you. Anytime we hear about the Pharisees, we need to boo. Thank you. And it's a response to the behavior that he saw when he visited this Pharisee. So the Pharisees, okay, who were a group of people who were around at Jesus' time, okay, and they were known, worryingly, for their traits of legalism, hypocrisy, and a focus on outward appearance over inner spirituality. That's a little bit scary, because they thought that they were doing everything right. And I think sometimes we think we're doing everything right, and sometimes we're not. So in today's vocabulary, the Pharisees, thank you, would have been described as entitled. How many of us have met an entitled person? A person who drives in the middle lane of the motorway at 50 miles an hour? A person who's rude to the waiting staff in a restaurant? A person who's rude to the checkout staff in the supermarket? A person who thinks that their time is more important than your time. Absolutely. So do we ever act entitled? There's a question. You see, we see stories in the media all the time about entitled people. I am very, very bad at getting caught in little holes and reading things that are completely pointless on Facebook and other places. And there are stories about people who steal the window seats on planes, even though they haven't paid the extra money to have them. There's people about children who demand more presents, although my favourite example of that is Dudley Dursley in Harry Potter. Only 31 presents, I had 32 last year. Anyway, pushing in at the front of a queue, not sharing the chores, demanding a table at a full restaurant, people who put their children's right to make a noise above somebody else's right to sleep in on a Saturday morning. Anyway, not sure who's entitled in that situation, but they're all stories about people who put themselves first and other people last. So I was thinking about, do we ever do this? And it's like, I know that I do this. Okay, I do this when I get in from work because in my head I've had a really, really busy day. I've been out for a very long time and I need quiet and a rest. No, mostly the kids. And so I don't want to listen to what's happened in their day. I know it's bad, isn't it? It's really bad. And sometimes at the weekend, because I'm out every day in the week, I just want to sit on my backside and do nothing. And other people want to go out and do stuff. And I'm like, oh, effort. And I'm not putting other people first. And I'm not putting myself last. Now, I just want to put a little thing in here. Because we hear an awful lot about self-care at the moment. And about not overdoing it. And about not pushing ourselves beyond our boundaries. So where is the line between putting other people first and putting ourselves last and self-care and making sure we've still got enough to give to our community? And I've written on here, I don't have the answers, but it's interesting to think about. So sorry about that, everybody. That's a different point for everybody because you know what you need to function as a person. So, in the story, yeah, absolutely. In the story, the guests and the guy who was throwing the party, the Pharisee, thank you, thought it was their right to take the place of honor. They wanted to come in and they wanted to sit in the most important seat. Okay, but what if? What if the village chief was coming? I don't know if they have a village chief. They have one in Moana, which means it's definitely a thing. What if the community leader was invited? What if the king was on the guest list? Then it's really embarrassing because here I am in my very important seat because I'm a very important person. And the person holding the party has to come up to me and go, excuse me, that is not your seat. Can you come and sit all the way down here? Okay, because this is where the empty seat is now. Hello, it's very good to see you. And we've got a problem because in those days, where you sat at the table talked about how important you were. So I've put myself in an important seat, but I've ended up being the least important. We'll come back to that thought as well. Oh my, there are a lot of thoughts today. So Jesus was telling his followers in this story to guard against situations where they might put themselves first and be shown up because their status was not what they thought it was. It says that he was told not to invite his friends to his party, but to invite the people who couldn't repay him, the poor, the crippled, and the lame. And it's really interesting, when we plan a party, who do we invite? We invite our friends, we invite our families, we invite the people that we know. But this story and the one after it talk about not doing that and just going out and finding people who might like a party but don't have one. We'll come back to that as well. So, what does this have to do with harvest? It's a really good question, isn't it? And this is the question that we asked. So when we give our harvest gifts here, we are giving, by the nature of what we do, to people who have less than we do. People who are not expecting anything in return. People who, for whatever reason, are in that situation. They may want to give things in return. They may be in that situation just temporarily and it's not where they feel comfortable. I'm pretty sure they don't feel comfortable. But it's a similar way to today's story. And this is a great way to put others first and ourselves last. All of us have stuff. And it's good to remember that other people sometimes don't have stuff, and whether that's food and things like that, or whether that's other things, and we have a number of opportunities between now and Christmas to make sure that we're thinking outside of our own families and our own friends, and opportunities to give stuff. We've got the toy service coming up on the 23rd of November, and then another opportunity to give Christmas gifts for the homeless on the 14th of December. I knew somebody would know. Amazing. So we've got other opportunities. But I wanted to take this a step further because there is another meaning underlying all of this. And to have a look at this, we're going to look back at our call to worship, which Angela read right at the beginning of our service. And our call to worship was another thing that Jesus said, and it talks about harvest. It says, Jesus said to his disciples, his followers, "The harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord, who is in charge of the harvest, and ask him to send more workers into his fields." So at this point, he wasn't talking about a physical harvest. He wasn't talking about going out into the fields and harvesting crops. He was talking about a harvest of people. Jesus was put here so that people could believe in him, could find out about him, could experience him. And then, as Roland said, at the end of that reading, could be invited to God's enormous party in the sky. The next chapter after this chapter, which was Luke 14, is that true? It was Luke 14. Luke 15 is a fantastic chapter. It contains stories that lots of you will know. There's a parable of the lost coin, the parable of the lost sheep, the parable of the prodigal son, and they're all stories about people who found something that they had lost. And it's again talking about people who find Jesus, they find out about Jesus, and heaven has a party. So, that call to worship, it says, the harvest is great. Great big, not great amazing, although probably both. Lots of people are ready to hear about Jesus. Even the media is reporting on a thing called the quiet revival, that there are loads of people just coming to church. It's amazing. They might never have been before, they might not have been for a long time. Do we know people, or could we know people, could we meet people who are in that situation? The workers are few. So the workers are people who are going out and telling people about the fact that they love Jesus. And most of us in here have already made a declaration at some point in our life that we love Jesus. And if we love Jesus, then we should be telling other people about it. For example, I find this all the time. There are loads of people who do Slimming World. And when Slimming World started, it was life-changing. And there were loads of people who'd come to church and tell their mates about Slimming World. And they'd take their mates to Slimming World. And then their mates would love Slimming World. And they'd talk to their mates. And they'd take them to Slimming World. Now, it's not for everyone because lots of you are, Anyway. But it was a thing. People were telling other people about something that was important to them. And then taking other people with them. And as a result, Slimming World grew. I don't think it's as big now as it was then, but at the time, it was massive. Do we do the same thing with church? Are we as excited about the change that Jesus has made in us that we're going to tell other people and say, you should come to church with me because this will make a difference to you? I don't know. So, question. Are we putting other people first? Are we telling them about that thing that's important, that Jesus thing that's important? So we've had the harvest is great, the workers are few. It says, pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. We're pretty good at praying. But it didn't just say pray randomly. It said pray and ask him to send more workers into the fields, because there's all these people out there who need to know how much Jesus loves them, how much Jesus wants to welcome them to his enormous party in the sky. So question, are we the solution? Could we be the solution? Sometimes an invitation is all it takes. In America, they did some research, and the research found, this is in America, which is very different to here, I'll tell you how in a minute. They found that of people who don't generally go to church, 80% of them would go to church if they were invited by a family member or by a friend. Interestingly, they did similar research in England, and the figures are not quite as high. And there are many reasons for that we don't need to talk about. But they did discover that the figure was still about 30%. That's about a third. Which means if we invite 3 people to come to church with us, one of them will probably come. So we don't look at that and go, well, that's a really low number, what a shame. We go, that's 1 in 3. That means when we're standing in the queue at Asda's and there are 3 people in the queue with us, if we invited all of them to church, one of them might come. Who knows? Exciting, isn't it? So, we don't gain anything by inviting people to church. It doesn't benefit us financially. It doesn't benefit us in terms of our status. But we are simply sharing something that is important to us. The love that Jesus has for us. The love that Jesus has for them. Possibly the most important thing, and something that Jesus himself told us to do. So, Vanda's going to come in a minute, and we've got some things on the tables which are invitations, which may give us a little physical way to put this into practice. Vanda!